Welcome back. It's 8:23 a.m. Central African time. Of course, this is News and Views on Salam Media. Our next guest is Reverend Moss Ntlha. We're going to be talking about Chief Justice Mogoeng's term, which is officially ended on Monday, the 11th of October. And of course, there's been questions raised as to what would be regarded as his legacy. There's diverse opinions on his tenure as the leader of the judiciary. Rev Moss Ntlha, good morning. Welcome to the program and wonderful to have you with us.
Good morning, and I'm delighted to be hosted by you this morning, and good morning to the listeners as well.
Thank you indeed for your kind words. Your thoughts on the legacy of Justice Mogoeng. Undoubtedly, he was a very controversial figure, was he not?
Very controversial, you're right, yes. I think there are two things to say. The one is that as a Chief Justice, we can credit him for a number of interventions, obviously, that have helped us in the journey towards solidifying and strengthening the institutions of states such as the courts. You will recall that at various times during his time, there were some attacks on the judiciary by elements in the political class, and he used to speak out against that, saying that no one should charge the judiciary unfairly without any basis. And this was in a context where there was a lot of impunity with regard to corruption, with regard to people feeling above the law. And in 2016, I remember we were doing part of the campaign of the Save South Africa, demanding that the impunity of the former president should come to an end, and that they should heed the recommendation of the public prosecutor on the need to pay back the money and so on. And I think the Chief Justice gave a very important ruling at that stage, which put clarity in terms of the fact that there is no impunity for anyone, including the head of state. So for that and many other interventions, he made a name for himself, I suppose, in terms of being family anti-corruption and demanding the supremacy of the Constitution. So to that extent, we are thankful for his contribution. However, I think there's the other side of his tenure, which is very worrisome, and that is the fact that he seemed to be unaware that because he's such a national leader holding a public office with so much authority, any pronouncement that he made could be taken as the rule of the country. And so when he very clearly flouted in aspects of our foreign policy, for example, with regard to our relationship with Israel, it was going way beyond what was expected, which is just Chief Justice. And so there have been moments like that. The vaccine issue is another, where he made statements that may very well say that he was not in a court, he was in a public meeting. But all of these statements mean that South Africans ought to be looking carefully at the next time they choose a Chief Justice, that it would be people who stay within their lane and they do not pronounce on matters about which they do not know enough.
So you did indicate that obviously his opinions on the Palestine-Israel conflict was very widely and well known. He has been seen as being significantly and profoundly pro-Israel, which is a great disappointment to me and many people in our country. Over and above of that, it's also fair to say that Mogoeng's term has been defined by two things. The first was the man who appointed him, and that obviously is Jacob Zuma, and the Chief Justice's own strongly held and often publicly stated religious beliefs, which you've alluded to as well.
That's correct. I mean, at the appointment of the Chief Justice, many people were disappointed, obviously, that he came at the job from relatively obscure, not certainly among the people who were prominently seen to be contenders for the post, and there were reservations among many, and so in a sense, the former president appointed him may very well be seen in that sense that he made a misjudgment that he would not he would be very compliant with regards to the issues of corruption and he would be very easily persuaded to look at the other direction if it came to matters that affected the Chief Justice and the former president. But he made a wrong move there, and that is why I think it was Jacob Zuma, in electing him, he thought he was electing someone he could find compliant. It turned out so. And so I think that it's probably to the benefit of the country that he did that miscalculation. But as for his...
Okay. I've got two quick questions, Rev. And the first one is obviously Mogoeng's role as the chairperson of the JS Commission, the Judicial Service Commission, for the interviewing of justices to the Constitutional Court, was the latest controversy that put him in the spotlight, that was described by CASAC as unlawful and irrational. Your thoughts to that issue? And all right, go ahead, and then I'll pose my final question to you.
The part of the question I didn't hear. Could you say what about the JSC?
His role as chairperson for the interviewing of justices to the Court is the latest controversy, or was the latest controversy, was it not?
Okay. Yeah, okay. I think that is I suppose that's the circumstances that we have to work with as a society. There are very few people who are without blemish. And so in a sense, we have to be charitable with all people. I mean, if you think from there are some who feel the head of state should not be in his position because of Marikana or because of whatever. And so if we went that route, there would be very few people who could work in any of our public institutions. So I think what we can say is that even so, people ought to stay within their lane, B, in all of their pronouncements, and do things according to the norms and standards of that particular position.
Point taken, Reverend, and a saying comes to mind in response to what you've just said, that no one's without blemish, and that is, let him who has not sinned cast the first stone. So you're right, none of us are perfect. Let's leave it there. Thank you indeed for your insights on this issue. Talk again next time.
Thank you.
Go well. Of course, we do know that the Chief Justice's approach and involvement are some of the issues outside of court that were disturbing on a number of levels. In particular, Mogoeng overstepped accept the ethically acceptable engagement of judges in public discourse and the need to avoid politically sensitive issues depending on how you read it. But Mogoeng has always made it clear that whoever cares to listen, that he was a man of God and he would not align himself to any approach that stifles his freedom of religion and expression. 8:34 exactly, still to come, we'll be talking about Charity Week.
Durban, KwaZulu-Natal has been the hardest hit by the recent